Welcome to another edition of Unconventional Playbook, three-point play position. I got my fellas with me today. Mr. Terrence Austin. I got my guy, Coach Young, Rodney Young in the house. How you doing, fellas?
What's happening? What's going on?
Outstanding. Yes, sir. UC Nation, what is up? Stand up. What's going on?
Hey, man. Well, hey, listen, we got to get right into it. This is the most exciting time of the year for me. You got the NCAA tournament going on, a little bit of March Madness. I like both sides of the coin. You know, I pay attention to the men. You know, that's probably the most popular, although I shouldn't say that because the women and their sport, obviously I'm a college basketball coach. I coach women, and they're creeping up on the men. Last year, they destroyed the men in terms of ratings, marketing, and I know that was the Caitlin Clark effect. So it's going to be interesting to see if the women's game can continue to sustain that level of success. It's going to be interesting to see what the numbers are at the end of this tournament compared to the men, if they overshadow the men like they did last year. But the women's sport is really gaining ground. And I think if you would have told me that 5 years ago, I would have never believed it. And the women game is really catching fire. I mean, you got Paige Beckers and Juju, and you got the GOAT in terms of coaches on the women's side. I mean, I know you got Gino Auriemma, so no disrespect to Gino, but Dawn Staley is right on his heels in what she's doing at South Carolina. What are your thoughts, fellas? T, I'll throw it to you first. Because I know you're probably partial to South Carolina. So I throw it to you first. What are your thoughts about the women's game compared to the men's game?
Well, Lionel, my love for women's basketball goes back to 1995 when the Navy sent me here to Norfolk, and I used to follow the Lady Monarchs of Old Dominion, coached by Wendy Larry, Clarice Mashaguana, Tisha Penachera, Natalie Diaz. I used to love those teams, okay? And that was my first year.
Oh, you're going old school, T.
Oh, yeah, right. Back in 1995. And that was the year, Lionel, they went to the championship and lost to Pat Summitt and those Tennessee Volunteers, yeah. So they finished second that year. So my love goes back all the way to 1995. Bring it to today now. Yesterday, I was on the edge of my couch watching the school just 15 minutes away from my door here, the Norfolk State Lady Spartans, go toe-to-toe with those Maryland Terrapins. They went toe-to-toe with them. And, you know, Maryland, larger, getting the calls, you know, a better team. But those Lady Spartans fought tooth and nail and gave that team a run, you know. Our home girl, you know, Brad Seller's daughter, she was a little hobbled on her legs, so she wasn't that effective. But those Lady Spartans were right there, man, the whole time. So I prefer the women. I really do. I prefer the women. And like I say, that goes back to 1995, even before it was popular.
Okay.
Real time.
Okay, yeah, those are some old school names you mentioned, man. So I hadn't thought about some of those names until you mentioned them. So yeah, great info. Rod, how about you, man?
Man, Tisha Penachero, yeah, he went back. He went back in the Wayback Machine. You know, for me, of course, having coached both sides, coaching the boys' game at one point in time, and then coaching the girls' game, I just love good basketball. And so, with the women's game, you know, I just, we were talking beforehand, you know, I'm into the women's game. Cheryl Miller was like my boyhood crush, watching Cheryl Miller, the GOAT, go after it, you know, and then just growing up and, you know, we talk about Dawn Staley. I remember when Dawn Staley was out here hooping, okay, straight out of Philly. And, you know, I love the game and how it has evolved. And yes, Caitlin Clark and there are others, you know, but that girl Juju at USC, she ain't no joke. I've watched her play a little bit, and I see what she doing, and it's like that young lady can play. However, you got to go through South Carolina, and the job that Dawn Staley has done, even, you know, wrestling the rings away from the legends like Gino Auriemma, the late Pat Summitt. Those were the two mainstays in women's basketball. And now when you say women's basketball, you have to say Dawn Staley. So
Yes,
for
you do.
me, on the women's side, you got to knock off South Carolina. I mean, you can call all the ups. Like I said, I like Juju at USC, but at the end of the day, you got to beat Dawn Staley and that South Carolina team. On the men's side, my Cinderella team, because I've been watching here and there. My Cinderella, I love Creighton and what they brought to the table.
Creighton's
They
good.
got eliminated. Yeah, they just got eliminated. So, I'm a big Cooper Flagg fan. I know Duke is the blue blood. I seen Michigan State. Of course, Coach Izzo always has them guys ready to go.
Yep.
It's excitement in basketball, but to be honest, if you gave me a choice of watching the women and the men, I'm gonna watch the women. They're just because for me now, it's not about dunking and all that. The ladies bring the fundamentals that for an old school guy like me, I like to watch it. It is ball movement, man movement, defensive principles. There's some grittiness, there's some pettiness, there's some chippiness, and I love to see it. So if I had an opportunity to choose right now, I'm going to choose the women's game. I enjoy what's going on right now.
Well, as human beings, we are all, yearning for characters. And I think that's where the women's game is really beating out the men's game, because you have on the men's side, you got guys leaving early for the NBA, all that stuff. On the women's side of things, you get a chance to get emotionally attached to players. You talk about Juju. Juju is, number one, she's a force multiplier. She makes everybody on her team better. She's a 3-level scorer. She has the intermediate game. She's got the high percentage game underneath the basket where she can finish, and she can also step out and do some things. So she is the next great player, although I can't sleep on my girl Paige Beckers from Hopkins, Minnesota up here. Okay. I'll tell you a quick story about when I first saw Paige. My son was dating a young lady from Hopkins High School, and she came over to my house, and she knew I was a college basketball coach. And she said, "Coach, I got a young lady you should be recruiting." And I said, "Who is this young lady?" And she says her name is Paige Beckers. I knew nothing about Paige at the time. She was a young girl. So when anybody comes to me about, "Hey, Coach, you should go recruit this player," I'm going to go and do some research and at least go see who this young lady is. Well, just to cut the story short a little bit, first time I saw Paige play, I said, "There's no way in heck we getting this girl at Viterbo University." She was box office before she even got to high school. She's a special talent.
How old was she at the time, Coach? How old was she? Oh man,
she was in 8th grade.
Oh wow.
Yeah, she was in 8th grade. So, when you look at these characters now, and I call them characters, not to demean them or to disrespect them, but people want to get attached to certain players, emotionally attached. And I think that's what the men's game is missing at times, because there's such a high turnover rate. In terms of, Cinderellas, I've been trying to tell people about South Dakota State on the women's side that upset Oklahoma State yesterday. The coach at South Carolina, Aaron Johnson, man, this guy, he can coach. He's won 12 straight Summit titles, and his teams are tough and gritty. So I knew Oklahoma State was going to be a victim yesterday. And now they have UConn in the second round. And I think UConn is favored to win. I will pick UConn to win that game, but I think it's going to be a lot tougher. Remember I said this. I think it's going to be a lot tougher than people think, because that South Dakota State team is hardwired. Rodney, you mentioned on the men's side Cooper Flagg. Everybody knows his talent, but the one question mark about him, because he's going to be top 1 or 2 in the draft, probably 1, does his game translate to the NBA, do you think?
Well, seeing is that when Cooper was like in junior high school, Cooper Flagg was already playing with NBA players.
That's
The
right.
NBA knows about Cooper Flagg right now because he's what you call he's a multifaceted player. His game is so intriguing because the kid can stand out and hit tray bombs. The kid can post up, give it to you left side, right side. He can take you
Yeah.
off the dribble and he can put you in the basket if you need to. He's sneaky
That's
athletic.
right.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so depending on and I'm not saying that the Spurs are tanking in San Antonio, but
You can say it, Rod.
You can
You
say
can
it.
say they're tanking.
They are.
you know it's very it's a coinky dink that Victor Wembanyama goes down. He was due to blood clots, but then De'Aaron Fox goes down for the rest of the season. It
Yep.
eerily sounds like
Hey.
when they got Tim Duncan, because David Robinson got hurt, Avery Johnson, they all got hurt, and then the Spurs fell into the number one pick. Now,
Yeah.
if Cooper Flagg shows up in San Antonio, the West is going to get shut down for the next 5 to 7 years.
Yeah,
Okay?
it's over.
Cooper Flagg's a player.
Yep. Yep.
I
What are your
agree.
thoughts about Cooper Flagg, T?
I agree. I agree 100% with what you're saying, Rodney. They were talking about him the other day on the Odd Couple sports radio show, and basically saying he could be the face of the NBA. He just could be. Yeah, he could be. He's just that good. And they were, of course, trying to compare him to Larry Bird, but his game doesn't look like Larry Bird. They were naming a couple other players in the league that is, his game looks like. But yeah, that kid is great. He really is. And if San Antonio got him with De'Aaron Fox and, would Chris Paul still be there, even just to kind of teach him a little bit, teach him from that point guard position. Oh, man, look out. Yeah, lights out in the West. Yeah, real talk.
Okay. I'm about to put you guys on the spot right now. So I want you to look at the men's side and I want you to look at the women's side. Let's start with the men first. Who wins the national championship?
Let me go first real quick because you guys, I'm sure, are more knowledgeable. My sleeper, real talk, well, I had two.
Yeah.
One got beat yesterday, was Texas A&M, okay?
Okay.
Texas A&M was a sleeper. BYU, they remind me of those old Indiana Hoosier teams that don't beat themselves. They're fundamental, X's and O's, and they go at it, okay? So
good point.
That's my sleeper, BYU. But I think if I had to bet, I think Tennessee, with that outstanding guard play, can take it all. I really do. I think Tennessee, they've been banging at the door the last couple of years, haven't quite pushed through. But I wouldn't be surprised if Tennessee didn't cut down the net. So BYU is my sleeper, and Tennessee to win it all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not a bad choice. I like BYU as your sleeper, and I do see a possibility where Tennessee could pull this thing off. Rod, what you think, man?
All right, so I'm of course to win the whole thing. Like I said, I just sat here for the last couple minutes talking about Cooper Flagg. So I got to roll with Duke. I got to roll with the Blue Bloods. But my sleeper, and I watched them the other night, is the Houston Cougars.
It's not bad.
Houston, they're quietly making some noise. They're kind of oxymoronic. They're quietly making.
They were kind of picked to win. I don't think that's a sleeper. They were picked to win by a lot of the national players.
Tennessee. I do dig Tennessee. Tennessee is rolling. You can't sleep on Auburn. But I'm going with the Blue Blood. I'm going with the Blue Blood to win it all in Duke.
Okay. I like Duke as well. I just think they are, number one, they're super well coached. Just watching some of the stuff they run. They are great out of timeouts in terms of the sets that they run. They're multi-defensive, so they can throw a lot of things at you during the course of the game. And what people don't realize is when you get into these tournament situations, you don't get a lot of time to practice and prepare like you normally would in a regular season game. So I think that comes into play because Duke can throw a lot of things at you. I just think they're going to be a very hard out. My sleeper team, in terms of winning it all, man, I gotta go with Tom Izzo and Michigan State.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be tough defensively. They're going to be physical. There's nothing that Izzo hasn't seen as a coach.
True.
So if I had to pick a sleeper, it would probably be those guys. It's tough. There's a lot of good sleeper teams out there. T, I like your pick of BYU. I think BYU is a lot tougher than people think they are. They beat the Badgers yesterday, and a lot of people had the Badgers as an Elite Eight team. And to be able to go in there and control that game pretty much all game long. They almost let it slip away at the end, but to control that game all game long, hats off to BYU.
Gotcha. Now, Coach, outside of you liking their coach, is there anyone on that team, on that Michigan State team, or player or players that you really, really like?
Well, the one thing about, Michigan State is Tom Izzo builds his team where there's not really that standout. They're just a bunch of pieces that kind of complement each other. So there's not really a superstar on that team, in my opinion. But collectively, T, I just think they play well together.
Okay.
On any given night on the offensive side of the ball, it could be the Holman kid. It could be anybody. And then defensively, a lot of people look at defense in terms of, can you guard your player? They do a really good job of spidering to the ball. So when they're defending you, all five are defending you. All five are rebounding. So it just makes for a tough out when you go up against Michigan State. That's for sure.
Gotcha.
There's a kid that they have on that team, and his name slips my mind right now, but he wears number 55. This kid is an absolute dog. Okay,
Yeah.
I watched him, and then Jason Richardson, NBA player, his son plays on that team.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do agree with L Train. It's a collective unit. Tom Izzo is just an off the chain coach. What you get from a Michigan State basketball team. You're gonna get physicality to the 10th degree. It's gonna be physical. You're gonna be in a fight, but it's gonna be execution. Okay, on the offensive end, and it's not gonna be one person standing out. You know a Tom Izzo team when you play. So that's a good call.
I say this.
I can't.
Yeah, I say this all the time jokingly, but there's some element of truth to it. There are a bunch of Draymond Greens. Like every year, he just recruits a bunch of Draymonds, and that's who they are every single year. So they'll be a tough out. Okay, on the women's side, who's winning this whole thing?
I'm going to go with South Carolina, my birth state, my home state, the Gamecocks, Dawn Staley. Yeah, they're going to get it. They're going to win it this year.
Okay.
Just like in NBA, I think the road goes through Boston, in the East, or it goes through Boston, period. It goes through South Carolina. That's it. Gamecocks.
I agree. I can't even – just a short conversation. To beat a man, as Ric Flair would say, you got to beat the man. And the man right now is South Carolina.
South Carolina, yep.
Yeah, I can't argue, fellas, with that pick, but I want to be a little different. I don't want this to be a unanimous South Carolina thing, even though I understand why you picked the Gamecocks. I'm going to go with USC and Juju. Now, the only reason why I'm going to say that is that you always have a chance when you have the best person on the floor. And, I can't debate that they're better than South Carolina, but sometimes, man, really, really great players, they step up in those moments.
True. Right.
And they have the ability to carry a team. Now, that task against South Carolina is going to be tough. And, again, I'm just trying to go a different avenue with this. So, again, I wouldn't be surprised if South Carolina wins it. I don't think it's a bad pick. But if I had to go with somebody else that maybe people are kind of sleeping on in terms of winning the whole thing, I'm going with USC.
USC, okay. I'm going to use a football analogy. If they match up with South Carolina, you know how Coach Belichick takes the best player on the other team out of it? I think Dawn Staley would do that if they match up. So there you go. There you go.
Hey, T, I can't argue that. I can't argue it.
Dawn Staley is the one coach that you're like, it doesn't matter what you do. She figures you out. And so don't get me wrong. I love Juju. I think she is. She's the truth. She's the Cooper Flagg on the women's side. She is.
Yeah.
She can ball.
Yeah.
But that juggernaut in South Carolina, that'll be tough. That's gonna be tough.
That is.
Yeah.
That is.
So,
yeah, so we'll keep watching. We'll keep talking about this in future episodes, keeping an eye on what's going on, see who's right or wrong. This last week has just been mentally fatiguing to me, fellas. It's just been mentally fatiguing for me. You know what I'm about to bring up. The whole Aaron Rodgers thing is finally over in Minnesota. I've got a lot of opinions on this, but I think the national question is, okay, the Minnesota Vikings are out on Aaron Rodgers. Where to next? Because it was slated that it was either going to be Minnesota, it was going to be New York Giants, or it was going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. New York Giants just signed Winston. Mm-hmm. So I don't think they would bring Aaron Rodgers in after signing him. I don't think they're going to bring in two quarterbacks. So that spot is taken up. I think Jameis Winston is going to be that bridge quarterback there. Now the Vikings have said no. So now it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Aaron Rodgers still hasn't committed. What does Aaron Rodgers do? Where does he end up? What are your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers?
I thought as of Saturday morning, it was going to be Pittsburgh, but he left the building, and it seems like things are still pending. They're pending.
Yes.
If it doesn't work in Pittsburgh, where else is there for him to go? Yeah, where else is there for him to go? So I see it happening in Pittsburgh. Some organizations can take on a diva such as Aaron Rodgers, Jeopardy, Pat McAfee, and everything else that he does. And the Steelers are a grown-up big boy organization, and I think Coach Tomlin and his staff can handle that. So that's where I see him going. I do.
Okay.
So for me, because I'm gonna give you the floor, because I know you got to take a real good take on this. But for me, if he does not go to Pittsburgh, then he's done. To be perfectly honest, he's done. Because he wants to, and he's not gonna go in there on a veteran's minimum, because he truly believes that he's still a top tier quarterback, and he absolutely is not. He is delusional in that. Number two, Mike Tomlin runs a tight ship. He don't have time for all the shenanigans that comes with Aaron Rodgers. But I do say this. Aaron Rodgers is going to be sitting down and having a conversation. If he doesn't, I think he's crazy, with Ben Roethlisberger. I think he'll sit with Big Ben, or Big Ben will reach out to him and say, look, this is the Steeler way. This is what we do. This is how we do it. Okay? Now, will he eventually end up a Steeler? Yeah, but on the Steelers' dime. The Steelers are not going to pay him $20 and $30 million. If that be the case, they may even bring back Russell Wilson, because Russell Wilson is still out here. Now with Jameis Winston going to New York, now Russell's options have now been cut down. He either going to go to Cleveland, which Cleveland don't have the money for him. He's looking for $20 or $30 million in a 2-year deal. Browns don't have that kind of money. Okay, they trying to bleed money out of a turnip right now in Cleveland. Right. So there's a possibility that they'll just settle on Russell Wilson. So right now, Aaron Rodgers is in peril. And congratulations to the Minnesota Vikings for saying, nah, we ain't messing with that. He can go on somewhere else. So that's my take. Go ahead and get it, L Train.
Hey, here's my thoughts about Aaron Rodgers. Okay, because this is the part of this that is really irritating me. I was on board, even though I'm a JJ McCarthy guy. I think the Minnesota Vikings roster is set up to do some things this upcoming season. And I don't fault Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. I don't fault KOC for just taking a look at the Aaron Rodgers situation to see if this is something that they wanted to do. I think that if they would have just ignored it, I just think that's football malpractice. You don't turn this team over to a 22-year-old young man who didn't play at all last year, didn't practice at all last year, without some thought when you have a first ballot Hall of Famer knocking on the door. So I'm a little bit different than a lot of people that were just like, oh man, we don't bring Aaron Rodgers in here. I think you have to look at it. Now that the Minnesota Vikings have said no, here's my stance. They should never revisit bringing in Aaron Rodgers ever again, because the national media out there is saying they like to focus on certain statements. So I think the statement was put out by Tom Pelissero saying the Vikings are not interested in Aaron Rodgers at this time. They should never be interested in Aaron Rodgers now, because now if you bring him in and JJ McCarthy has been your QB1 and you usurp JJ McCarthy for Aaron Rodgers, whether it's OTAs, whether it's training camp, whether it's the regular season, you're never going to get JJ McCarthy back.
Okay.
So if you're rolling with JJ McCarthy and you're all in with JJ McCarthy now, you've got to be all in with JJ McCarthy for the duration of his rookie contract. There is no going back. There is no change of course. You've done your due diligence. Now commit to the young man. As far as Aaron Rodgers, my call is this. Unless the Steelers, because the Steelers are desperate. I don't think they want to bring back Russell Wilson. And Justin Fields is gone. They screwed that situation up. So the Steelers need a quarterback. So they may up their price a little bit, Rodney. They may up it a little bit. I don't think they're going to make an offer that's going to blow anybody out of the water. Okay? I think that's the only way Aaron Rodgers plays, is if the Steelers blow him out of the water with an offer, and I don't see that happening. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to wait this thing out. I think he's taking a look at the quarterback situation in Minnesota, and he doesn't think that that's going to last. So he's going to wait this thing out, man. All offseason long, he will not be in training camp with anybody. He's not going to be playing in any preseason games. And he's going to take a look at that Viking situation and evaluate it and see what happens there. Also, I think he may be looking at a couple of other spots other than the Vikings, like the Brock Purdy situation in San Francisco. Aaron Rodgers wants to go somewhere where he can feasibly win because he's only got a year or two left. He doesn't want to go out like he did with the New York Jets last year. Aaron Rodgers wants to win. Just for my Vikings, I think we should put that to bed, never, ever explore it again, and move on with JJ McCarthy.
Well, Coach, you said something. Your Vikings said not at this time, which means they're going to leave the door open. So stand by for a little bit more turmoil coming your way. That's it.
They got to shut that door, man.
Yeah, but they said, hey, not at this time. So that's the door's open still. So.
And for me, even with the Brock Purdy situation, in San Francisco, if Aaron Rodgers wants to win, he wants to go somewhere where he's going to win. Once again, I bring the point up. He was in New York with not, he had two quality, good receivers. He had an excellent tight end in the running game. The problem was Aaron Rodgers. It wasn't anybody else. It was Aaron Rodgers. I don't care where you put him. I know Minnesota is saying that, and I agree with T, they leaving the door open. No, I agree with you, Coach. Shut the door. Because if you bring him in there, you're going to stunt the growth of JJ McCarthy. He has already said, Aaron Rodgers, he's not here to train, the incoming quarterback. And he learned that from who? Brett Favre. Because Brett Favre didn't do that with him either when he came in from the University of California. So
right.
I think he's delusional in the terms of he thinks he's still a top tier, top 1% quarterback. And I think that's where he doesn't understand that. No, you now have to show and prove. And I hope, UC Nation, I'm saying this to y'all. If the Minnesota Vikings don't shut this door on Aaron Rodgers, all that money that you spending right now is going to go to waste, because if he comes in there, I hate saying this, but this is what it is. He is like LeBron James, and this the only LeBron James reference I will make. He is an organizational destroyer. So if you want to destroy your organization and you guys are trying to rebuild, go ahead and bring in Aaron Rodgers. I'd rather
Rod,
you go get
Rod, tell us how you really feel about LeBron.
No, I'm just saying that's just on the business side. I'm sorry. I didn't want to, connect the dots like that, act for his own, but he's an organizational destroyer. Look at what the only organization that LeBron James did not destroy was ran by Pat Riley, and Pat Riley wasn't going to let him destroy that organization. He destroyed Cleveland when he left. Okay. He came back to Cleveland. They rebuilt. Then he left again, but Dan Gilbert was smart enough this time. The second time, he didn't let that happen. But if you look at LeBron James' history, signing them 1-and-1s, that's exactly what he did. But with Aaron Rodgers, I don't want to get off that. Aaron Rodgers believes that he's still the number one quarterback. You will stunt the growth of JJ McCarthy, and I really believe that if the Minnesota Vikings brings him in, there's going to be a big problem, and it's just going to stunt the growth of that team.
Yeah, I got a couple of things I got to push back on, Rod. I got to push back on, and this whole Aaron Rodgers thing. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is as bad as everybody says he is. Like, I don't think he's that elite quarterback anymore. Like, I don't think he's top 5 in the league, but he's not far off. I think you got to give him a little bit of grace coming off that Achilles tear, as with Kirk Cousins. I don't think Kirk Cousins is as bad as he showed last year either. I just think the whole thing about Aaron Rodgers is all of his off-the-field stuff. People think he's a weirdo. People don't think he's a good teammate. You talk about an organizational destroyer, that is Aaron Rodgers. And I think some people kind of mix all of that with his ability to play. He threw 28 touchdowns last year and only 11 interceptions on a bad wheel with a bad organization and a bad coaching staff on a bad team. That's pretty good. I think if Aaron Rodgers plays this year, and is probably going to be with the Pittsburgh Steelers, I don't think he's going to look as bad next year as he looked with a bad organization like the Jets. And in terms of the LeBron James thing, this topic is really emotional for me because of LeBron James. T knows this. I am not a LeBron James fan at all. I think LeBron James is an acquired taste for people. But he's a Cleveland homeboy, although he separates himself from Cleveland. He says he's an Akron guy. See, and that's just one of the things that I don't like. Mix it. It's fine. But he's a Cleveland homeboy, and the one thing that LeBron James has done, and you think of all the greats that have played with the Indians, now the Guardians, that have played with the Cleveland Cavaliers, that have played with the Cleveland Browns. LeBron James, although some may say he's an organizational destroyer, brought the Cleveland Cavaliers to the promised land in a town that is starved for a championship. All three of us know that how hard it is to win a championship in Cleveland, Ohio. And this is probably the biggest thing that he's going to have on his legacy. He has accomplished a lot of stuff as a basketball player. I think, and here's where LeBron James missed the boat for me. He's got, 5 titles right now?
4.
5 titles?
4
titles.
4. You're right.
4 titles, okay. He's got 4 titles right now. His most important title is the one in Cleveland.
Exactly.
It's the one in
No
Cleveland.
doubt.
And I think if LeBron James would have stayed home and had his career in Cleveland, the duration of it, he probably would have got a couple more. He probably would have got a couple more. And I think because he's jumped around so much, regardless of whether he wants to admit it or not, I think that taints his legacy a little bit. Making the super team taints his legacy a little bit. If he would have stayed in Cleveland and won even two championships, I think he would go down as one of the greatest players ever. And I know he's still going to go down as that, but I just think 2 championships in Cleveland outshines 5 or 6 championships in other places.
Yeah, Rob Parker always jokes saying that his statue is going to have a basketball in one hand and a suitcase in the other hand. So there you go. Yeah, that's what Rob Parker says. Yeah.
So to converse your pushback, I am not necessarily. I'm a LeBron appreciator, and here's where I go with this. Okay, because I've watched this kid. I used to sit in the jar and watch him at 16, 17 years old, and watch his mother Gloria walking the balcony with a James LeBron's mom jersey on.
Right.
Here's the thing for me. He's going to go down as one of the greatest players in the game. Okay, the numbers don't lie. But it's the baggage sometimes that LeBron brings behind it, okay, that I think turns people off, okay? Now, mind you, this gentleman is a model citizen. We ain't heard him in the midst of no scandals and nothing like that. I think the worst thing he did was when he went on live TV and he made the decision, and he admitted that was a bad business move. I get that. What he's doing at 40 years old is amazing. Okay, right now.
Incredible.
He's still one of the top players in the game at 40 years old. Although I will say Father Time has been knocking on the door because he's been having some nagging injuries that he did not have. Here's my thing with LeBron James. I come from the when I say organizational destroyer, that 1-and-1 contract. You have to look and see what that did to the Cavaliers when he left the first time. I do agree. They should have, when he came back and he won the championship, they should have won at least 3. Now, he wasn't the only culprit because Kyrie Irving wanted to be the man. He didn't like playing second fiddle. And even Kyrie said that was a problem. Okay?
Hey, guys, I'm still here. I'm just having trouble with my camera. Go ahead.
Got you. He didn't want to play second fiddle, okay? And so that's when he went to Boston and found out that he shouldn't have left. So you figure if that core group of him, Kevin Love, and Kyrie Irving stayed together, they would have won at least 3 championships. The Golden State Warriors panicked because that 3-1 lead that they lost and went and got Kevin Durant. They panicked. They knew they could not beat that Cavalier team. Okay.
That was a game
changer. So then by him going to LA, him taking off to LA, that was a business move. That wasn't necessarily a basketball thing. I mean, because Kobe, rest his soul, Kobe didn't really like that he was there, but Kobe said he didn't care. He wasn't going to change Kobe's legacy. He had to, go to it. So if somebody says that he's one of the greatest Lakers, I'm going to fight that tooth and nail. Okay. But LeBron James, the proof is in the pudding of what he has done in this league. Now, there are some things that he's done that's caused the league to take a step back. When you look at the All-Star game, that, him not being in the slam dunk competition, you see how sorry the slam dunk competition is. You got to go get. Yeah, you got to go get a young man that's not even playing in the NBA. He's playing in the G League. Okay? You mean to tell me we don't have dunkers enough that's play?
We don't.
So I digress. But I will not I'm not going to poo-poo on LeBron's legacy. He is in that top 5. I just say this, and I know people might get mad at me. I'm not taking Jordan off that Mount Rushmore. And when you talk about Michael Jordan, I don't understand why people are poo-pooing on Kobe Bryant. I don't get that. I don't understand it. Nobody can make me understand it. But LeBron is in that upper echelon. I mean, he took over the scoring title, from Kareem, and he's going to make it to where it's going to be nearly impossible to break.
Right.
Okay. So you can't do. I get it, L Train. I get where you're coming from, but you cannot deny LeBron James's greatness. You just
I can't even. Yeah. I can't even sit here and believe I'm defending LeBron because it's no secret. I'm not a hater of LeBron James. I'm just not a fan. I know, T, you're a fan of LeBron. What's your take on, all the stuff that he's done, all the greatness? I mean, that can't be expunged, but what are your thoughts on LeBron?
As I'm listening to you all, I remember I was in Warrensville in 2016 on Father's Day that Sunday when we won Game 7. I was in Cleveland. I remember, I think when we tied the series up when we made it a Game 7, I think that game was Thursday night. I got on the road Saturday morning leaving Virginia, and I remember I drove those 8.5 hours, made it to Cleveland that Saturday afternoon. We went out to Beechwood Place to the Dicks. The line was out the door getting gear. This was on that Saturday. And I remember going to church Sunday morning with a Cleveland Cavaliers T-shirt on, went to church. And we were on McCann Street that evening watching Game 7. And Lionel, that was my most memorable Father's Day because I lost my dad 2 years after that. So anyway, again, as I'm listening to you all, I'm just remembering Game 7. And on my cell phone, I have the ringtone of Kyrie hitting that 3 in Steph's mouth with Mike Breen calling it. So if you call my phone, you'll hear it, Irving and Curry. And Kyrie dropping that 3, in Steph's mouth to seal Game 7. So that's me right there.
Now, I got a quick one for you guys. Should Kyrie Irving and LeBron James both share the MVP of that series?
I would have no problem with it. I would have no problem with it. Yeah, I wouldn't have no problem with him. Because both of them scored, 40-something points in Game 5 or Game 6 and 7 or Game 5 and 6. I remember those back-to-back games, 5 and 6, where Kyrie scored 40-something points. He was unrelentless. He was awesome. So I would not have a problem with that, to answer your question. Nope. Wouldn't have a problem with that.
I guess, Ron, great question, by the way.
Yeah.
Great question. I agree with T. I don't think I would have any problem with that either. Just looking back on it and reflecting on it, I would have no problem with co-MVPs.
Because the only reason I asked that question, guys, is because if you go back to that game and you look at because I think LeBron, this was before LeBron had hit the free throws. The timeout prior to Kyrie coming out and hitting that shot, LeBron James said himself, he went to Ty Lue and said, put the ball in his hands. Yeah. Because the mismatch defensively was Curry. Curry couldn't guard Kyrie to save his life. Okay, that's why they kept putting Klay Thompson on Kyrie. And even Klay Thompson had difficulty dealing with Kyrie. I just look back at that and I say there should have been co-MVPs because they were both great. Don't get me wrong. You had LeBron make that super block from the backside. You had Kyrie get to his spot and drained it straight in his grill. And it,
in his mouth.
and honorable mention for Kevin Love moving his feet. Okay. Let's just give the honorable mention to Kevin Love for moving his feet. Because we all know, guys, Curry could have blew by Kevin Love if he wanted to. Okay. Yep. But because he kept defensive position, he moved his feet. Okay. Kudos to that. But I just feel like that series, Kyrie and LeBron took it over. Okay. Yep. And I just wanted to ask that question. I just wanted to ask just to see what you guys
Great question. Say. Great question. Before we wrap this up, I would be remiss if I didn't mention we lost a great one this past week. And Mr. George Foreman passed away. A lot of the young kids and people that didn't get an opportunity to watch him in his prime fight, some of the greats came up in a great boxing era. some people look at him as the guy that invented the George Foreman grill. Some of the younger kids, he is so much more than that. When I heard that George Foreman passed, I was shocked. Like he hadn't been in my thoughts for a while, and he's kind of been out of the public eye a little bit. So when I heard it, I was a little bit shocked, and immediately I was just saddened because I know, number one, we lost a great athlete, but number two, we lost just a great person that, just came up through some challenging times for him, made a name for himself. And then even when his boxing was done, he kind of disappeared a little bit, and then he reinvented himself as an entrepreneur and a businessman, and then came back for a second stint at boxing and won the heavyweight championship. So George Foreman just garnered a lot of respect from me, and just had a wonderful, wonderful life being an outsider looking in. Guys, what are your thoughts about the passing of George Foreman?
Yeah, he was a giant of a man, and I remember I saw a documentary on him some years ago, because he took a lot of heat after the Olympics when he raised the American flag, and people were saying, "What are you doing raising the flag?" And he told a story of growing up in the Fifth Ward in Houston and some of the things that he used to do and running the streets and this and that. And he tells a story one time he was running from the police, and he hid under a house. He slid up under a house, hiding from the police, and he said he just felt dirty. He just felt dirty and disgusting. He was just ashamed, and he was under this house hiding from the police, and there was dogs under there. And he said, "God, if you get me out of this, I'll turn my life around." And that's what he did. He turned his life around. So he said when he raised that American flag, it really, really meant a lot to him, because here he was, I was a changed man. So he was a giant of a man, a heck of a businessman, just like, we lost the brother a couple weeks ago that had all those Wendy's restaurants, Junior Bridgman. Remember him?
Yeah.
I didn't hear that, T.
Yeah. He passed a few weeks ago.
Bridgman.
And he was outstanding, businessman too, similar to, George Foreman. And Hulk Hogan had an opportunity to market those George Foreman grills, but he passed on it. So George said, "I'll take it." And good, because George is a great guy, great man. So rest in power, King. But he was a giant of a man.
Yep.
And I'm going to talk about George Foreman, the boxer, because George Foreman in the 70s was an absolute beast.
Yeah.
Okay. There were two fighters that Ali said that hit him the hardest. One was Ernie Shavers, and the other was George Foreman.
Yes.
George Foreman packed a punch that would knock a bull down. I watched him hit Smoking Joe Frazier so hard that man leaped in the air. Okay. George Foreman was no joke in the ring, but he is the tale of two lives, because when he boxed the first time, he let it be known he was not a nice person. He just wanted to harm people. It wasn't until, the Thriller in Manila, and he almost died, and he turned his life around. Just like, T is saying, he turned his life around, and he did disappear for a while. He would do some commentary for HBO every once in a while, but then he came back, and, the fight against Michael Moore, to me, was the most inspirational thing I ever seen, because Michael Moore was just beating the stuffing out of him. But for some reason, George, that power never left him.
Never
left him. Okay? And he hit Michael Moore so hard, I knew when you go back and you watch that film, he hit Michael Moore the first time, and I jumped. And I'm like, and as soon as he hit him again and he dropped, I said, he's out. He's done. And so for him to win the heavyweight championship at that point, was amazing. But the way he turned his life around, he was an ordained pastor. He helped so many people. And it was just a shock to me. And so, rest in peace to the legend George Foreman. And like we said before, all my heavyweight legends, my boxing legends are gone, with him. Ali is gone. Foreman is gone. Marvin Hagler, gone. Joe Frazier, gone. And that was the golden time in boxing. And one of these times we're gonna have to sit and we talk a little box. I love the golden era of boxing. You know what I mean? But Rest in peace to George Foreman, and my condolences definitely to his family. And he will be missed because he was a personality, boy. I tell you.
Yeah, life is precious.
Definitely.
Life is precious.
Yeah, definitely. I grew up as a little kid watching boxing, the Sugar Ray Leonards, and again, yeah, we may have to dedicate an episode just to talk about the golden years of boxing, but the Sugar Ray Leonards, the marvelous Marvin Haglers, the Tommy Hearnses. During that time when I was little, I enjoyed watching it, but I really didn't have the appreciation for it as a little kid. I really didn't have the appreciation until I got to high school and I started seeing Mike Tyson just knocking everybody out, Evander Holyfield. I just remember the conversations at the lunchroom in Warrensville High School about some of those fights and stuff like that. So that's when I really started to appreciate it. But yeah, boxing during those times, man, were just golden years, and we're definitely going to have to dedicate more time to it. I appreciate you, brothers, man. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate you being a part of the 3-Point Play on Unconventional Playbook. I've gotten a lot of feedback from UP Nation out there in terms of liking the show, liking what we do. It's a little detour from all the Vikings talk that I do, where I get a chance to branch off and just tackle some topics that I ordinarily don't get a chance to tackle. And I wouldn't be able to do that without you guys. So, T, Rod, thank you for joining the show.
Thanks for the invite. Thank you.
Love being here with the UC Nation. I'm gonna keep saying, stand up, y'all. This gonna be fun. I'm telling you, we got some stuff that's gonna be coming down the line. This gonna be fun. I can't wait. I can't wait.
There you go.
Yeah,
There you go.
This is going to be fantastic. I think this thing is going to catch fire and really, really grow. This has been Unconventional Playbook. UP Nation, please hit that like and subscribe button. Check out Rodney's podcast. Let's talk about it. Those of you that haven't had an opportunity to check it out, please check his podcast out. Those of you that, hey, if you need some literature for your young kids, please check out T's bookstore, sales online. T, where can they find you at?
The Printed Word Bookstore. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. The Printed Word Bookstore, Portsmouth, Virginia.
There you go, UP Nation. This has been Unconventional Playbook. And as always, we will see you when we see you.
Take care.